Hey there folks, welcome to the show. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to take a 360-degree panorama like the one we created in my last video and map it to a sphere inside Maya, or any 3D package for that matter, to create some really interesting perspective and create some interesting effects and actually recompose a photograph of our environment because of the fact that we have the entire environment in this panorama. So let's go into Maya here, let's create a basic sphere. I'm going to assign a basic material. And into the material, I'm going to slot our panorama as a basic texture. Let's use this garden here. We'll go into texture view in the viewport, which it should hopefully be showing us. Yep, and we just turn diffuse down. So let's get our background off here. If we look around now, we can see that we can get inside this sphere and we can actually photograph our environment now with all the control and freedom of, having a digital computer-generated camera. I might just smooth this sphere out. You can see that those polygons are kind of juddery, so we'll smooth that. I'm also noticing that inside the sphere, this building is around the wrong way. This whole garden is actually horizontally flipped. So let's go into our UV texture editor. We'll get to our UVs, we'll get polygons flip, which is set to horizontal flip by default. And now when we go inside the sphere, we can see that the house is around the right way. So here's the coolest thing about this. We can obviously recompose pictures using our panorama. If we go into our aspect ratio here, if we want to create like an Instagram, a square picture for Instagram, we can do that. We just have to set our resolution to square. And then I'm going to set my resolution gate up so that I can see my aspect ratio and frame things up. Now here's the even cooler thing. I can go to my focal length in my camera attributes and I can go from 35 to 16, and now I can get super wide angles. I can even go all the way out to 8mm if I want, and now I can get really super wide angles. I can really capture the feel of being in this environment. Look how far out I can get. That is actually borderline ridiculous. But the coolest thing about this, you can really capture the lighting of this environment and what it's like to be in that garden. Let's replace this panorama with something else. Let's maybe go into our garden shed here. And I'm just going to put our focal length back to 16 because 8 is a little bit on the wide side for interiors, I think. So here we go, inside the garden shed. You can see how much of this space we're able to capture. And let's say I like this angle here, or I move the camera to the side, to the one side of the sphere to get wider. I can now, of course, go into my render settings and increase my render samples. And if I have my render resolution set up correctly, I can actually render out this sphere. I can render out that crop, if you will. And this image will be ready for Instagram. But what I can see here is, what can I see? Oh no, it says that we were zoomed out, so it was a little bit aliased. We don't need quite as many samples as that, and we certainly shouldn't have any diffuse or specular or reflections going on with these polys. It should be just, straight texture mapped onto the sphere. You can see a little bit of a seam here. Let me see if I can zoom into this once it's done. You can see a seam here. The reason we have a seam is because we tone mapped this panorama after the panorama was stitched. So this is not a problem with stitching. This is just because we tone mapped the exposures, and that alters the brightness and contrast of different regions. So when you go to map the one side to the other, it might not necessarily blend as we see here. But if we go down, we can see that there's not really any problem. And over here, we can see there's not really any problem. There's a bit of a problem. So it's just because those regions have been altered in the tone mapping process. So these are pretty cool angles. You can see here. We have a lot of creative possibilities with this. We can really, get in here and alter our camera angle and achieve fields of view that just really wouldn't have been possible with a conventional lens or a conventional setup. Let's take a look at a different material, a different panorama. And this is something, this is very basic 3D. You should be able to do this in Blender or 3ds Max or anything like that. Here's a panorama of the driveway outside the front of my house. I might go and change this panorama once again. Let's go and pick up that photo I showed you guys at the beginning of this video by a tree. And here we go again. You can see if I zoom all the way out like this, I can actually get some effects that we've seen before, kind of like the little planet effects that you see people doing with panoramas. But because we can actually move closer to the one side, we can give this tree the illusion that it's curving around and that sort of thing. So we can get some really, really cool effects like this. And we can change our aspect ratio back to widescreen, you know, like 1280/720, good old 16:9 for, you know, your average computer monitor, your TVs. And yeah, there's kind of a glimpse of what you can do. Try getting an angle like this with a conventional lens. You'll find it to be very, very difficult. There you go, folks. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope it's been of interest.